welcome to week 10 of the Birdhouse presented by Blubird. We have another great week. Hopefully my microphone is back and you guys are enjoying the tunes this week after a couple weeks of technical difficulties. Glad you're all here nice and early. If I could ask you one favor before we get into the show, just drop down into that little purple pill in the bottom right. Drop a like, a retweet, and a comment. Let's get this room filled out, and we will be back with you guys in just a couple minutes. Today, we're joined by David Orban. He's the managing advisor at Beyond Enterprises, and we're going to have a great episode exploring AI and blockchain, IoT, machine learning, and even space colonization. We'll get right into it in a few minutes. Talk to you guys soon. All right, guys, welcome in. We've made it to week 10 of the Birdhouse. This week, we're going to be exploring AI and blockchain, Internet of Things, machine learning, space colonization, and more. I'm Mike, part of the business development team at Blubird, and also the host of the Birdhouse. Today, we're joined with special guest David Orban. He's the managing advisor at Beyond Enterprises. And we'll also have our regular speakers, Corey and Ian, with us as well. Corey's the founder of Blubird, and Ian is the chief marketing officer. We look forward to getting this conversation to you, but before we do, let's kick it off. Corey, how are you doing today? Corey, I'm not sure if you're speaking. You might be rugged.
Oh, wait, how about now?
Yeah, I got you now, loud and clear.
Right. So apparently when I'm muted on here, I'm unmuted. And when I'm unmuted, I'm muted. So good old Elon switched the button around on me today.
Hey, man, I'm just glad it's not me this time.
But yeah, like I was talking to myself, mate, there's been a lot of awesome things happening, with us in the last, week and a bit. As I alluded to on the last space, there's a lot of RWA, minting going on. So that's also very, very exciting. Can't wait for these public press releases for that to hit. But mate, yeah, it's definitely a very exciting time, to be doing what we're doing.
Outstanding, man. Well, I look forward to hearing more about it. I'm glad you're with us again this week. Ian, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. That was my daughter's first day of kindergarten, so it was a big day in our house. And there's football tonight, so I'm fantastic.
Two big things. My kids are much bigger, but enjoy every moment because it goes by so quick. But football definitely for those in the United States or watching, on streaming elsewhere. But beyond that, great topics. I mean, we're going to be talking, as everyone saw in the graphics and the tweet, IoT, AI, machine learning, and even space exploration. Lots of topics I love, so looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I got to imagine that this space will run smoothly just because these are all things that Elon might support as well. So, big ups to everybody who has been exploring AI, blockchain, Internet of Things, and even space colonization. This is certainly a great topic. But I want to welcome our special guest, David, as well. David is from Beyond Enterprises. Um, Beyond Enterprises offers strategic and technical leadership, advisory, and support capabilities to projects in all stages of blockchain and new technology implementation and development. So I have a feeling that David is going to offer us a ton of insight on all of these topics as we're together today. Just like to remind everybody, the Birdhouse is just a place where we kind of have a conversation, right? We don't necessarily show projects, but we have partners and strategic advisors that come in and share their view of the space and all things emerging in technology. So we just like to have a good chat and hopefully provide something to the community that's both informative and entertaining. So with that, David, welcome to the Birdhouse. Can you just give us a brief overview of what Beyond Enterprises is, kind of what you do as a managing advisor, and what initially drew you into the crypto, blockchain, Web3 space?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. I have been in AI since the mid 1980s. We are talking about the previous millennium, right? And it, I started very early being interested in how technology changes society and the way we live, how it enables us to address the challenges that we see around us. And for a lot of the people who were already attuned to looking at new solutions emerging, it was relatively easy to recognize Bitcoin when it was born as something that could matter. I was in the 90s also part of the cypherpunk movement that promoted advanced encryption when it was a very restricted military technology that was almost impossible to adopt at a broad level in the US. And so for me and many other people, Bitcoin, blockchain, and everything that came after was impossible to resist. And for me, it was especially fascinating to see how there has been since then almost like a rhythmic dance of talent, ebbing and flowing, moving from one field to the other between blockchain and AI, as people get very rightly excited about what is going on in both of those fields. At Beyond, to finish answering your question, we love helping projects addressing their challenges, whether they are deepening the development of their roadmap as they develop and implement their technology, analyzing their business model, including tokenomics and how they reflect the principles of their white papers in smart contracts, building and supporting communities as their project is adopted more broadly worldwide. And we have been doing it for over 10 years with clients in many various vertical fields, adopting blockchain technologies and tokenization in various ways. We like to every year measure our impact by looking at what is the combined market cap of the clients that we have worked with. And last time, this was a little more than $4 billion, just to give an idea of the kinds of activities that we do.
Wow, absolutely unreal. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's great to have you on the stage. We're always lucky to have super plugged in and capable guests that join us, and we look forward to it each week. Just getting right into it, just because you have such a deep background and you have seen all these technologies, what kind of is the relationship between AI and blockchain right now, besides both being technologies that have received a lot of hype, but from a fundamental and technological standpoint, where do you see the relationship between them right now?
So there is a lot of sound and important philosophical grounding in both of these technologies. I think it is a bit disingenuous to believe that the people who are passionate about solving certain challenges with a given technology are neutral about what they are doing, that they go just with an open mind without any um, uh, conception of their position before and after and what the impact of what they are doing could be. And if we realize that, then it is easier to recognize how fundamental the passion driving founders of disruptive, world-changing projects is. And uh, uh, in blockchain, obviously, we have the desire of building a world that is transparent, accountable, that is empowering people who otherwise are excluded from the benefits of advanced financial solutions, for example. And AI is similarly driven by the desire of delivering the benefits of advanced intelligence everywhere. There are a lot of AI solutions today that are centralized, but more and more, either because of open source or because of new types of architectures, advanced AR capabilities can also be implemented and delivered in a decentralized manner.
Really interesting. Really interesting. They can be delivered in a decentralized manner. Can you expand on that just a little bit more? Because I think I've got it, but that's such a big concept. Do
Sure.
you mind sharing?
Let me give you a couple of simple examples. When you use ChatGPT, you are using a leading AI model, very, very capable, in many ways better than many humans. I am happy to admit that it is better than me in so many ways, especially in how vast its abilities are, covering all kinds of different areas, right? But it is also eminently centralized, right? Whether it is running on a given data center or another data center, whether you are using it in a browser or on the app, you depend on it in a central location and you are under its final control. If your account is suspended, if you get your account closed, there is very little recourse. There is very little ability from the point of view of a single user, of a consumer of those services to do anything about it. On the other hand, if you are using more and more very interesting and smart functionality on your phone, that is more and more delivered by the phone itself without going out in the cloud, without relying on the centralized data centers of whether it is Google or Apple or anyone else. It used to be the case that speech to text when you, rather than leaving a 2-3 minute long rambling voice recording on WhatsApp, someone who then has to listen to it. You have the courtesy of actually using the other microphone and dictating the message that the other person can read much more rapidly. That conversion from your speech to the text of the message happens on the phone. So it is millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions and billions of people who are already today experiencing these centralized AI applications. And then, of course, intersecting this with the blockchain means that we can improve its security, ability to be coupled with smart contracts, providing all kinds of additional features that neither of these two technologies can by themselves independently make available.
So I'll jump in. It's Ian. Very interesting, and detailed explanation. So thank you for that. One of the things, I've been in technology for over 2 decades now, and I always joke around, but I'm rather serious, that AI really needs to stand for more accessible rather than artificial intelligence. And accessibility, all these topics that you've brought up, blockchain, so that there's control of data, finance, security, um, by users, certainly AI, and then IoT with sensors and the ability to get information, at the edge, at the data center, and everywhere in between. Just curious what your thoughts are on the importance of accessibility, David.
It used to be the case, and still is, that emerging technologies are the most expensive, the hardest to use, and the least functional at the beginning. Some of you may remember, or if you watch an old movie from the 90s, recognize these ridiculous bricks that people were holding against their head, frying their brain. And at the time, those were the mobile phones, and they would cost the equivalent of $10,000 or $15,000, and they were a symbol of yuppie, young urban professional success. And there would be very few people who had them. Today, the same is happening with other technologies. Another example is, I already mentioned speech recognition and speech to text functionality. Again, in the 90s, the first of those programs, for example, Dragon Dictate, needed hours of training to recognize a few hundred words, and then you had to speak with each word separately. Today, no training is needed. Everyone can speak very naturally. And this is world changing. At the beginning, what happened? That only those who really needed, whether they were mobile phones, I don't know, Wall Street traders, classic example, or in the case of speech recognition, people who were paralyzed, quadriplegics, who could not use the computer otherwise. Of course, they made the investment, whether in money or time and effort, to be able to use that technology. But today it is available to anyone. Mobile phones are literally ubiquitous. Even the poorest person in the world sets aside money in order to be able to buy a phone. And a current example of what is happening in leading edge technology being inaccessible and hard to use and expensive at the beginning, but then rapidly becoming inexpensive and accessible to everyone is brain-computer interfaces. Neuralink has already implanted 2 people with a brain implant and an interface that enables them, and these are paralyzed people, to use the computer at a speed that beats me and you and everyone else. They are world record holders of certain tests in, clicking around the screen, chasing a given dot. They can do it with their brains faster than anyone else. But of course, today, that process, that procedure is risky and expensive. And, well, whether it is going to take 5 years or 10 years, but there will be millions or tens of millions of people with these interfaces. And a lot of people who are skeptical or even horrified today will change their minds, and they will recognize that now that particular technology is something they definitely want.
Yeah, it's interesting how much life is changing, beyond just the screen. I'm not sure if you watched any of the Olympics, but in the opening ceremony, the person who had that exoskeleton machinery on so they could walk, it really is changing lives.
Yes, and we are seeing a lot of these technologies benefiting people. And what we need is to find a way, on one hand, to really extend the limits of our adaptability because of how rapidly the new technologies are arriving and changing, as you say, the world around us. So it cannot take 2 generations to adapt to the new thing. It cannot even take 1 generation. We have to get our hands dirty, experiment, make mistakes, um, keep or regain the childlike curiosity and risk taking that was natural to us when we were in our teens or 20s. And at the same time, we need to paradoxically slow also down, because the frenzy and the frantic exploration that many of us feel, whether we are looking at the innovations in blockchain or in the innovations in AI, is impossible to keep up with. So I have friends who say, well, yes, I was happy to come and be your guest in this live stream that we are doing together, or be on your podcast. But now I am desperate because in the hour or 2 that we spent together, the field advanced to a degree that I don't know if I will be able to catch up. And they are only half joking, right? So being able to step back and look at the big picture is equally important to understand what are the slower but important waves, and understand your role in both riding those waves, but understanding that you hardly can control what is happening and what is going on. This is especially difficult for politicians and regulators, because that is what they are supposed to tell us they can do. They know what needs to be done. They can put the various policies and regulations in place. They can foresee the effects of unexplored technologies. And unfortunately, it is not true. So they are not in a nice place. They are not in a comfortable place.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of them are trying, you know, to gain that control back, so they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. But I think ultimately something that it seems that you're focused on, it's not just about propelling one emerging technology, it's about connecting the dots and integrating them so that they help reinforce each other, right?
They definitely do. So at the title of this episode of the Birdhouse, we mentioned various things, and on the first sight, they could appear disconnected. What does IoT or AI or blockchain and the emerging machine economy have to do with each other? But here also, let me give you an example. When soon self-driving cars will be a day-to-day reality, wouldn't it be much better to give the ability to people to organize in networks each other rather than having to rely on a single provider like Uber or others? And that is what the ability of machines to communicate with each other reliably, to transact with each other in micro payments that don't require to paying the 2%, 3% tied to the credit card processors is the way to go, right? And this is just a very, very simple example of how these different components are tied together.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially from the AI perspective. As you're talking about this, the the perception that so many have been given through Hollywood or media is of the fearful nature, especially when these things are very new and unexplored. But the reality is that even the internet back in the early '90s was somewhat misunderstood by a lot of people and questioned, and how will that ever work? And yet there were people who had been building those protocols and using that system for years, if not decades, prior to the public consumption of it. And so I think you kind of unlocked a couple things here in explaining how AI and blockchain both interface with each other and complement and support each other. But I think one thing that I'm hearing is that it also creates somewhat of a check and balance system where they can be controlled and utilized in a controlled environment for the benefit, but still have some human level of interaction. And you gave me a bit of PTSD when you mentioned the Dragon software. I remember trying to have a boss dictate to me a bunch of things and then use that software. And he had paid a bunch of money for it and thought it was perfect, and I should have no problem. And it probably would have been easier if I just recorded it and hand wrote it. So thank you for bringing that little piece back up. But no, on the AI and the blockchain, you know, just as we are talking about that, what are the potential risks, or are there ethical concerns that you see from an AI in a decentralized system?
Being fearful, even paranoid about risks is natural. We are the descendants of those ancestors, Neanderthals or whoever they were, that freaked out when they heard something making noise in the shrubs or in the savannah. And the worst that could happen is that they were wrong and there was no saber-toothed tiger. But those who were telling them, don't worry, you don't have to panic, why are you always freaking out, were eaten. That is why we are programmed to actually pay attention to risks much more than the potential benefits when we see something new coming towards us. It is a very healthy, evolutionarily fit and adaptive behavior. But there is also a smaller but more impactful group of ancestors, and they are the wizards, they are the explorers, they are the risk takers, they are those who go from valley to valley and they taste every mushroom, hoping to not die, but discover whatever has the most powerful psychedelic effect, and whatever else they wanted to achieve with those incredibly courageous tests. And we inherited their daring to explore in order to then find what actually works. Maybe it won't, maybe I will die, but I cannot stop trying. So today, we are seeing the clash of these two points of views, and each, let's say, uh, broader, these days, continental society or aggregation will find its own balance. For example, in the US, it is very likely to go ahead and make as many as possible mistakes and then find out what doesn't work, either through the legal system or cleaning up some hopefully not too tragic mess that they create, and so on. At the other extreme can be something like China, that already published several hundred pages of AI regulations that are putting the people who are developing AI tools on a very clear path of what they are not allowed to do. And in the middle, maybe, is Europe, trying to preserve uh, um, an ever diminishing technological base of startups and enterprises that operate in the leading edge, while unfortunately incorporating a principle, the so-called precautionary principle, which is almost impossible to fulfill, where you have to prove there is not going to be any negative implication, no harm will come from using the technology that you are introducing in the market. It's an impossibly high barrier. And these are three examples of how the balance between the healthy paranoia and the curious risk-taking is being settled in different societies.
Wow, what a take. And I love the perspective that you added to it, in terms of the human nature and, the risk takers versus um, the evolutionary systems that we have in place just for, preservation and survival. I tend to think of myself as a risk taker, but I don't know if I'm out there just tasting all the mushrooms. So, more on the tech side. But I love that perspective, and I think it does offer a lot of insight into the way that the majority of people think about things versus those of us in that space that are in this space that are just saying, "Come on, this is great. The water's warm." So, um, I want to get David. I want to get your answer on this, but I want to get Corey involved too. And so, we've kind of talked about AI and blockchain, but Corey, I want to know, like, which sectors do you feel, have the most potential for disruption from AI and blockchain, currently as you see it from your perspective?
Alrighty, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay with my dodgy mute button here.
You're good. You're good.
All right, good. Cool. So, look, I've got a very unpopular opinion. I go against the grain for the most part when it comes to AI and blockchain, and that stems purely from our venture capital side. We've been pitched an absolute, a plethora of AI blockchain fused projects over the last 2 years, and I can honestly say not one of them has impressed me. Not one use case went beyond scientists, essentially, when it came to data models, the way they were structured, things like that. So As for what areas are going to get disrupted with AI and blockchain coupled together, I haven't found one yet that excited me. So so I know that's probably the worst thing that people want to hear about this, but that's just what I've seen personally. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of what all of the advancements in the AI sector. I just haven't seen the requirement or the need to bolt on blockchain to it yet. So I don't know if we will see a lot of disruption in the blockchain space natively that AI will bring, apart from basic automation stuff, which is really nothing special. It's been going on for a very long time anyway. It's more so pseudo AI than anything else. So I don't know. That's that's my unpopular take on it. I don't see it doing a whole lot in this point, but I'm happy to be proved wrong at the same time. So, if David, if you've got any kind of thoughts as to what I've currently seen versus what you've seen, I'd really, really love to hear that take because I've been rather disappointed just with what I've seen so far.
Rather than giving specific examples of this team or that team, this project or that project, even though I am an advisor to SingularityNet, which is an ecosystem of dozens of different AI projects, all decentralized, blockchain-based in many various fields. And SingularityNet is actually running a very interesting experiment because they are merging three tokens, Ocean Protocol, which is about data sharing, SingularityNet itself as a marketplace, and Fetch.ai with AI-powered smart contracts are in the middle of when it was announced an $8 billion merger of their tokens, right? Which is by itself interesting. But rather than talking about those specifically, I would like to offer two ways of finding ways to answer the question for everyone who is listening. And one is to look at the approach where obviously the talent needs to be there, and these two complementary talents in a founding team who are saying, okay, we can make it happen. We have the skills, we have the vision, and they identify some particular problem and start working on it and acquire users, going through the traditional motions of MVPs, minimum viable products with a simple set of features, and go from having 10 users to 100 users to 1,000 users and so on. And that is one way of looking at it, right? And it can be in so many different areas, especially now that a lot of barriers to entry for developing code are being lowered by fascinating new AI-driven development tools. Millions of new teams will enter the scene, and it will be a fantastic way to see how from India to South America, new talent will enter to prove themselves.
I guess
On the other end,
I guess I'll just rephrase my answer very slightly as well. I believe that AI can bring value to the blockchain space, yes, but I don't believe that every AI project requires a utility and a utility token. They should be standalone.
absolutely.
Yeah, that was more so, I guess, what I was trying to get at. Sorry, I just thought I'd clarify there.
No, I totally agree, and I hope I didn't give the impression that there is no role for example, centralized AI, right? Absolutely. There is a perfect role for centralized AI. If you are a nation state, you want your AI to be absolutely sovereign, self-sovereign, and centralized under your total centralized control. Absolutely. So it is guaranteed anyone working on centralized AI will have captive customers in the 200 nation states that will, just like they have to have an autonomous and sovereign electric grid, they will have to have an autonomous, centralized, and sovereign AI. Similarly, in finance, 500 million Europeans are, I'm not saying perfectly, but are served by the current financial institutions, by the banks, by credit cards, and whatever else. There aren't a lot of unbanked Europeans, right? But the promise of the new generation of DeFi and blockchain-based products empowering people to transact peer-to-peer among themselves is targeting the 2 billion people who otherwise don't have access, or maybe more, let's say 4 billion people who don't have reliable access to modern banking services. So back to the other part of the answer, the biggest disruption actually could come in the areas that are most difficult to attack and are regulated the highest. And I will give one example, which is healthcare. Data flows in healthcare, issues of confidentiality, issues of risk, these are very, very complicated. IBM was fined, I don't remember if 50 or 150 million pounds, whatever it is, a very large sum in the UK because they mishandled health data. And all the projects that they were working on were frozen, and they were not kicked out of the country, but almost. But today, with advanced cryptography, zero knowledge proof techniques, you can both deliver patient data as well as apply advanced AI models on the data without actually handing neither the data nor the models over to the researcher or the hospital or whoever is running the system, even though it is in open source. And we have not become sufficiently accustomed to the power and the magic of what these advanced encryption and zero knowledge proof approaches can actually provide. But the way that we do end-to-end encryption on our chats, which used to be very arcane and very difficult to set up, and now it is in everyone's hands, the same way ZKP, zero knowledge proof systems, are going to be ubiquitous as well. And the promise of that kind of disruption that overcomes the limitations that today's regulations put around healthcare is tremendous. So that is an example that I would offer.
No, definitely. That was a very well developed answer that you put forward there. So no, thanks for explaining that as well. And just while we're on the topic of AI, and I don't know if my team are going to shout at me for this or not, but we'll see. I'm curious to know, I guess, a bit of your view on more of the tinfoil hat side of AI. And I'm not talking about, the Skynet side of, because we've already seen that we're going to have robots in our houses by the end of this year, apparently. Which, AI powered robots and such to do your dishes and laundry and whatnot. So not so much the Skynet side of the tinfoil hat, but more so, because you've been involved in AI for such a long time, probably the longest that I've ever heard of really, or spoken to anybody who's ever been, that long involved in AI. More so the fact that there's a lot of people out there calling and saying that, the singularity has already happened. It's happened behind closed doors. It's happened with the military because, generally speaking, the military is around 20 years ahead of everybody else. And this is already being used to, do various things. So what's your thoughts and opinions? And this is purely speculative, I know, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that side.
The technological singularity has been introduced by Werner Vinci in a conference at NASA in 1993 as a concept, when he actually compared it with the physical singularity of black holes, where the self-reinforcing nature of machine intelligence, that rather than taking millions of years to develop like biological intelligence, can take a much shorter time, is almost explosive in nature and creates a barrier beyond which it is very hard to explore what happens. Now, that was in 1993, and since then, a lot of concepts around the technological singularity have evolved. Ray Kurzweil, who is one of the founders, together with Peter Diamandis of the Singularity University, where I'm an investor, an advisor, and a member of the faculty, published his book, The Singularity is Near, in 2005. And just a couple of months ago, he published the sequel, very appropriately entitled The Singularity is Nearer. And he looks very, very deeply with a lot of data, with a lot of research, what is going on and how it is going to change the world, when it is going to happen. Now, today we don't believe that we will not be able to understand what is happening in a post-singularitarian world. Or to be more specific, those of us who are courageous enough to at least some degree merge with the machines are going to be able to actively participate and understand what is going on. Those that give up this opportunity will have a harder time, for sure. And in that sense, for some communities, we are already definitely in a post-singularity world, because if you don't use phones, you don't use the internet, you don't use electricity, or whatever is the cutoff of a technology that for you is too advanced, and you refuse to embrace it, well, the world is going to be hard for you to interact with, to create value in that world. The example that I always give is, imagine that you hire someone and you select 100 candidates and you find the perfect one, and you're about to sit down with them to sign the employment agreement, when they very openly and without any embarrassment tell you that they cannot read or write. And there will be no way for you to hire them. It will be just impossible. You will be sorry and you will tell them, but that they cannot participate in the world. So what we can now ask ourselves is, when is it going to be the time when society will expect everyone to have a brain implant? When society will say, you know what? You would be a fantastic candidate, but you just told me that you do not have a brain-computer interface. Sorry, I cannot hire you. And when it will be perfectly legal to do so. Just like today, you can say, sorry, you cannot read or write, I cannot hire you. So I think that is an important question we have to ask ourselves. In terms of what advanced AI has or hasn't been able to already do in labs, I am not privy to knowledge that is not shared on AI Twitter, which I very happily consume all the time. But it is definitely the case that AI is scaling in its capabilities, and it keeps improving as more hardware, more data, and better algorithms are thrown at it. We haven't plateaued. We haven't reached a zero or a negative ROI situation yet. And it's fantastic. Whatever the name is going to be, whether it is Q Star or Strawberry or Orion or GPT Next. These are all names that have been thrown around, or whatever Anthropic or Llama is going to be in their next generations. They will be very likely able to keep reasoning for a very long time in their own subjective time, and then whether it takes minutes or seconds, it depends on the hardware, or maybe milliseconds, but the chain of reasoning will be really very long. And a direction that is going to be taken, hopefully very carefully, is to make them agentic. So we will be able and have them do things on our behalf, rather than us being the last and least reliable link in a chain of events. We will have the ability to tell the system, and we will trust the system pretty rapidly in the morning to say, listen, respond to my emails, and just send a couple my way, so that I take a look at the most important ones.
So I think you touched on something very important in that explanation there, and I think it's something that is very, and I'm going to appeal to the younger audience here and quote a game that came out. I think it was around 2005, 2000, around that, early 2000s, and it's called Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. And it touches on a lot of those subjects of, you get left behind if you don't go with the flow, with implants, with, transhumanism, and all of the likes. You're a subhuman, so to speak, because you're fully organic in that sense. And it really, portrays the social divides that can, come out of those scenarios. It's probably one of the best written titles to come out in that, in those early 2000s there. So if you're not familiar, it's well worth a little bit of a peek into it. You'll see that it's just mirrored exactly what you've just said. So very, very interesting on that front. And I think it's something that everybody's on a subconscious level very aware of as well. The fact that, these are not necessarily something that they might want to get involved with, like the Neuralink or anything like that, because it's very, still very controversial. I personally would probably never get it, because I just don't want to be, in that level merged with a machine. That's just my personal views. It might become an antiquated view, but it's definitely one that I'll always hold. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So, but there's going to be a very big division of those who accept it and are all for it, and those who are more like myself, who recognize certain dangers that are not worth the risk, or even when it's not the dangers, it's just the self-sovereignty of our own body, and not having to rely on outside or external forces just to be better. It's about honing your own skills. So, I can see both sides, the appeal to both sides. But yeah, I definitely think, like you said, there's going to be very much a divide, and very much a lot of discrimination. I think on both sides of, oh, you're one of those like cyborgs. No, you can't work for me. Or, oh, you're not a cyborg. You cannot work for us because you're not going to have high enough output. So I think there's going to be a rather turbulent, perhaps, time ahead as these things equalize. But no, very interesting nonetheless.
I agree. And in the past, things were relatively simpler. When Columbus discovered the Americas, quotation marks, discovered, they were inhabited by approximately 50 million people. 100 years later, 5 million. The Europeans committed one of the largest genocides in the history of humankind, killing via war or disease 95% of the native population. And no one much cared about it, right? It didn't make the news. Um, and and hopefully we will be able to behave differently when the economic output of native AI companies and native AI economies and native AI nations and native AI populations is potentially 100-fold larger in terms of GDP increase than today. So rather than increasing 1 or 2% per year, increasing 1 or 200% per year, doubling every year or doubling every 6 months the entire economy of a nation, it will be very difficult to resist. It will really take over, or the only way to resist is going to be to adopt the same kind of approaches in the other parts of the world as well. However, there are already surveys that agree with you, where 50, 60, even 70% of the people are against advanced AI. And so how will we find the right balance is going to be very challenging, very challenging. And we will have to be mutually much more tolerant than we have proven to be able in the past.
No, absolutely. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of maybe knee-jerk reactions to some large catastrophic events that might occur as well, due to quote unquote unshackled AI, to quote more of a movie, genre speak, of an AI that is not bound by any laws or rules. And I think that's going to be quite scary because there's going to be people doing it regardless. They'll do it in their basements, they'll do it in their garage, like it's not out of the reach for anybody at this point, because soon, very, very soon, if not already, you're going to be able to get AI that self-teaches and can grow and learn itself. So that is something that's going to be very hard, and like I guess it's easy to see the possibility of a lot of the movies and a lot of the science fiction that's out there of like, oh, like AI wars and, corporate giants using it for their gain and, all of the, the crazy, um, you know, aspects of where it can be used for maybe not so ethical purposes. And there's no way to know that it's going on unless they get busted for it. So, it could be very subtle. Like maybe you might look at BlackRock, for example, and go, wow, they've just come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden they are, one of the largest, asset holders in pretty well every major company in the world. So that in itself raises eyebrows, but it's not, nothing's provable. It's all speculation at that point. So yeah, I think we're in for some pretty wild rides when it comes to AI. Some of it I'm not really looking forward to. Some of it I am. But I honestly, we could probably fill up this entire talking panel on AI as a whole, probably for hours and hours. But I noticed that we've got some other topics in our title here, so I just wanted to kind of touch on the space colonization side, and the IoT side, and kind of how it all gels together and such. So yeah, I'd be keen to hear your take or your point of view on that.
Well, for me, really, space is a beautiful opportunity as well as a metaphor for so many of our challenges. And I'm really excited to see the new wave of initiatives that are not operating in the stale paradigm of government contracts and the nation states that have kept for decades space from becoming the thriving frontier that it deserves to be. And I often, for the past 10 plus years, when I speak about blockchain or Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies at conferences, when the audience is not of specialists, often there are skeptics and saying, well, what is it really for? Why would I need it? We have so many payment options for so many financial solutions. And I tell them that I have friends who are working on swarms of smart robots to be built in space with the task of exploring the mineral deposits or the water deposits in the asteroid belt. So imagine a few thousand of these robots, or maybe more, a few million of these robots in the asteroid belt doing their thing, AI driven, being able to plan what they need to do in order to achieve their goals. And obviously, they need to, for example, produce and then give each other propellant or transport the raw materials, or they need communication bandwidth to be reserved or prioritized has a given economic value. And so I would ask them, do you think that these transactions will be paid and settled in banknotes or via credit cards or paper checks, or they will make a wire transfer with a bank in the asteroid belt? No, none of those. They will use something that is native to their needs. It's completely machine readable. It's completely verifiable. It is decentralized. It is something that may or may not be called blockchain or Bitcoin for sure, but it resembles or it will inherit what we are working on today as we are building these new systems. And there are very interesting coincidences because I've been talking about this for a long time, and the company that I was referring to, without necessarily naming them, was called Planetary Resources. And 3 years ago, Planetary Resources went bankrupt, and the assets out of bankruptcy, including the founder CEO, were acquired and hired by Consensus. And to me, it was fantastic. It was exactly what I have been talking about. So I called, because I know the CEO. So I called him and had a conversation with him. Hey, I'm so happy you found a new home. So what are the new plans? And he said, I have no idea. I don't know why they bought it. I don't know what they want to do. And I haven't checked with him since. But it was interesting. It was such a counterpoint, at the same time, the realization of exactly what I have been talking about for years, and the complete and transparent admission that it wasn't necessarily very meaningful.
No, very, very interesting. Mike, I noticed you're back with us. Mate, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on what we've just been going over.
Yeah, I mean, this is way beyond my purview. I am happy to be back, but I was also just happy to listen to you guys. A couple amazing discussions really going on with both, where the AI conversation went, getting your perspective, and then kind of David responding to it, and then, just jumping right into this space, AI kind of blockchain, space that we're going to end up in, could potentially end up in. I tend to think that we will be headed that way. And I think that that's why, things like Bitcoin and, interplanetary digital money makes so much sense in the long run. And I think that, we'll need all these systems. So I'd just be speculating on a future state that, that my kids will have to live through, or my grandchildren will have to live through. But I do think that it's potentially possible, and I think that that's part of the foundation that we are lining up. So when I saw it on the run sheet for today and knew we were going to be talking about it, I definitely was keen to jump in and listen for a little bit. So David, thank you for sharing that. And it's that's interesting what you mentioned about Consensus too. I may have to do a little digging there and see what we can unearth, because that they're obviously monsters in our space as well. So that's kind of my take. But yeah, we're now a little bit over our hour. David, usually we go about an hour. Sometimes we go 90 minutes when the conversation's really great, and it has been today. But I want to be respectful of your time, obviously, and our audiences. So if you've got a couple more minutes, maybe we can just touch on the IoT. I know that that's something that Ian is very passionate about as well. But if not, then the AI discussion was fantastic, and we can wrap it now, and certainly have you back to talk about IoT and machine learning in the future.
I will be happy to come back, and this conversation with you guys was really interesting and stimulating for me. So I hope it was for our listeners as well.
No, absolutely. I know I took a lot away from it. I hope the audience did too. It was fantastic having you up. Your knowledge is so broad, and anybody that the projects you're advising on certainly is getting, awesome exposure and insight from you. So thank you for sharing that with the Blubird community. I want to, one of the things I like to do at the end of the show is just sort of give everybody an opportunity to say one more thing that maybe we didn't get to. So, David, if you'd like to share something about Beyond Enterprises, or anything on your mind that we didn't get to today, just to leave our audience with, take it away, about 90 seconds, and then we'll start closing out.
I was happy to follow your questions and the remarks that led us to a more philosophical area sometimes. But obviously, with Beyond, we are very down to earth, and I will be happy to talk to anyone who wants to explore how we can help them analyzing and addressing their challenges as they are bringing their projects to life in blockchain, AI, emerging technologies in different ways. I'm very easy to find online, and I'm happy to interact and answer questions. So I'm looking forward to both continuing these conversations and to engage with projects that can benefit from the kind of strategic advice that we provide.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for that. Anyone who has been listening, who's not following David, please give him a follow. Obviously, he's sharing insights all the time. And if you want to follow their business account, it's there in the audience. The Beyond Enterprises is B Enterprises with a Z. And so you can follow them there. Ian, I know you didn't get a whole lot of chance to speak today, but we're glad that you're here. Any takeaways from the AI and the blockchain discussion, or what we just heard about space colonization, or anything else on your mind?
So many amazing areas. A lot of the discussion that came up reminded me of Three Body Problem. I don't know if people are aware of that book, and then the series on Netflix, which actually just got signed for another season. But just, I think we want to have aspirations that there's so much more than us. And it's hard to understand what's possible. It's very similar to technology. And this whole discussion, David, thank you for all the insight. Corey, always making us think about the possibilities and what is real and not real. It all just reminded me of a Carl Sagan quote. It is far better to grasp the universe as it is, really, than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. So I think, we're going to use innovation to find out what's real, what's not, to push the hype aside and to make an impact on life. So, like I said, Mike, great job. Corey and David, thanks for keeping us thinking.
That's awesome, Ian. You always bring such a good perspective to things, and also just really wrap it into the overall why as to what we're trying to do. We each have our individual tasks and our ideas, but there's a core philosophy that you have that I think a lot of Web3 holds, and you articulate it so well in these closing moments every week. So thank you for that. Corey, at the beginning, you teased a little bit of stuff about Blubird. You also had some great takes on AI from your venture capitalist. Either of those directions, or anything else on your mind you want to leave us with before we head out for another episode?
No, not really. I mean, like the first thing I guess would be like, as always, Ian, you just have this repository of quotes that I'm always blown away how you manage to find a quote that fits each situation. I would love to take a peek into your brain one of these days, to be honest, because that's just insane. You've done it ever since I've known you, like 6.5 years ago. And it's just astounding each and every time. So thank you for always bringing those amazing quotes forward to us. David, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. It's not often that I get to have a true and thorough intellectual conversation. Usually they're very surface level. And I didn't even get to go as deep as I wanted to on today's talk, just because I know it would have completely blown out the time that we have to dig into these sorts of things. But it was a pleasure nonetheless. And, definitely looking forward to further discussions with the other areas that you're well versed in. And I'm sure that although I'm not as well versed in IoT and subsequent fields, I'm still going to have a deep enjoyment, with those conversations as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. Well, I'm sure that my daughter had an amazing first day of kindergarten today. I'm going to go check in with her a little bit, but as much as her world expanded and her mind was blown, this last hour and 20 minutes or so of conversation has really taken me to think about some things in AI and blockchain, areas that I think I'm pretty well exposed to, and really understand them from a much deeper perspective from two absolute masters. So thank you guys all for joining us. Be sure to follow the Blubird account if you aren't. Put those notifications on so you can check out episode 11 of the Birdhouse. We'll be right back with you next week, next Thursday, and Thursday in the States, Friday over in Australia. And until then, I just leave you guys on the way out. Have a great week. Flying out from the Birdhouse.
Cheers all.